My name is Harriet Crowe, but everyone around here just calls me Hattie. I'm 66 years old now, and I've spent the better part of my life tending to the light in the old lighthouse on Black Point, overlooking the jagged harbor of Eldridge Cove in Nova Scotia. It's a place where the Atlantic doesn't whisper, it roars. Fog rolls in like a living thing, thick as pea soup, and the waves crash against the rocks with a fury that could swallow a man whole. Folks say this coast is haunted by shipwrecks and lost souls, and maybe they're right. But me, I've always believed the sea gives back what it takes, if you're brave enough to ask. It's been 5 years since that stormy September evening changed everything, and even now, as I sit here in my creaky rocking chair with the salt, stiff curtains fluttering in the breeze, I can feel the chill of it creeping up my spine. The house is quieter these days, filled with the echoes of little feet that have grown into sturdy boots. But back then, it was just me and the ghosts. My husband, Tom, had passed a decade earlier from the lung sickness that comes from breathing in too much diesel and brine. And my only boy, Finley, God rest him, had been gone 2 years by then, lost in what everyone called a freak sailing accident off the Grand Banks. Or so I thought. Finley was 32 when he died, a broad-shouldered lad with his father's laugh and my stubborn streak. He married Vivienne 3 years before that, a sharp-eyed beauty from Halifax with a posh accent that hinted at old money from somewhere across the pond. Maybe England or one of those fancy European spots she never talked about. She swept into our lives like a summer squall, all silk scarves and stories of yacht parties in the Mediterranean. I liked her at first. She made Finley smile in a way I hadn't seen since he was knee-high, chasing crabs on the beach. But there was always something off about her, like a compass needle twitching the wrong way. She hated the salt in her hair, the mud on her boots. "Darling, this place is so quaint," she'd say, her lips curling just enough to sting. Quaint, as if our harbor wasn't the beating heart of Eldridge Cove, where generations of crows had mended nets and hauled lobster traps since the days of the tall ships. After Finley's death, Vivienne lingered for a spell, playing the grieving widow at the memorial service in the little white church by the wharf. She wore black like it was armor, tears glistening just so on her cheeks. But 6 months later, she packed up their seaside cottage and vanished to sort herself out in the city. No calls, no letters. Just a forwarding address in Toronto that bounced back undelivered. I didn't chase her. Grief has a way of hollowing you out, leaving room only for the work polishing the lighthouse lens, logging the ships in the fog, whispering to Tom and Finley under the stars. That's how I was spending my evenings, alone with a mug of black tea and the endless moan of the buoys. When she came back that night, it was the kind of dusk where the sky bleeds into the sea, all bruised purples and grays. I'd just finished my rounds at the lighthouse, the beam sweeping out like a golden finger over the harbor, warning the fishing boats home. The wind was picking up, whipping the gulls into a frenzy, and I could smell rain on the salt air. I trudged down the gravel path to the wharf. Our family wharf, really, with the old trawler tied up, and the shed full of coiled ropes and rusted tools. That's when I saw her. Vivienne's sleek Boston Whaler, cutting through the waves like a knife, engine growling low. She must have launched it from the public ramp up the cove. I hadn't heard her coming in the wind. She idled right up to the end of the wharf, her face pale as moonlight under that ridiculous wide-brimmed hat she always wore. Even from 50 yards away, through the gathering mist, I could see her hands shaking as she hauled something heavy from the boat's bow. A bulky oilskin bag, the kind we use for fall weather gear, sealed tight with leather straps and duct tape. It looked wrong, too bulky for tools or clothes, and the way she dragged it, grunting with effort, set my teeth on edge. "Vivienne." I called out, my voice swallowed by the surf. She didn't hear me. Or didn't want to. She heaved the bag onto the wharf's splintered planks, then kicked it once, hard, sending it tumbling over the edge into the churning black water below. The splash was small, swallowed quick by the waves, but I saw the bag bob for a second before the current grabbed it, pulling it under like a reluctant sacrifice. Vivienne didn't wait. She gunned the engine, the whaler spinning in a tight arc, spray flying up like white ghosts. She didn't glance back. Not at the wharf. Not at the lighthouse winking farewell. Not at me standing there frozen on the path, my lantern swinging forgotten in my hand. She was gone into the fog, swallowed by the night, leaving nothing but the echo of her wake slapping against the pilings. I don't know what made my feet move. Maybe it was the way that bag hit the water, too deliberate, too final. Or maybe it was the old instincts Tom had drilled into me. Never leave a man overboard without a line. Whatever it was, I dropped the lantern and ran. The path was slick with kelp and rain, my boots slipping on the rocks, but I didn't stop. My heart hammered like a bilge pump, and my lungs burned from the cold bite in the air. By the time I reached the wharf's edge, the bag was drifting, maybe 20 feet out, caught in an eddy against the barnacle, crusted pilings. The sea was rising fast, waves slapping higher, foam flecking my legs as I waded in up to my knees. Damn you, Vivienne, I muttered, tasting salt on my lips. I grabbed the boat hook from the shed. Long oak pole with a brass hook at the end, and thrust it out, snagging the oilskin strap on the second try. It was heavier than it looked, fighting me like it had a mind of its own, the water sucking at it greedy. I yanked harder, my arms screaming, the pole bending near to snapping. Inch by inch, I reeled it in, the bag scraping against the wharf's underside, barnacles tearing at the canvas. Finally, with a grunt that tore from my gut, I hauled it up onto the planks. Water streamed from it, pooling dark around my feet, and for a moment, I just knelt there gasping, hands on my knees, staring at the thing like it might bite. That's when I heard it. A sound so faint I thought the wind was playing tricks. A muffled thump, like a fish flopping in a bucket, followed by a cry, weak, ragged, like a seal pup separated from its mother. My blood turned to ice in my veins. No. I whispered to the darkening sky. Please, God, no. My fingers, numb and pruned from the water, fumbled with the straps. They were knotted tight, slick with salt, and the duct tape peeled away in stubborn strips. I clawed at it with my nails, cursing under my breath, the cry coming again. Fainter now, more desperate. Finally, the last strap gave, and I unzipped the bag with hands shaking so bad I nearly dropped it into the drink. The world tilted. Inside, wrapped in a sodden wool blanket that smelled of engine oil and blood, was a baby. A boy, tiny as a harbor seal pup, no more than a few days old. His skin was blue, tinged, lips cracked and salty, eyes squeezed shut against the cold. He wasn't moving much. Just a twitch of his little chest, so shallow I had to press my ear to it, to hear the flutter of breath. His umbilical cord was still attached, tied off with fishing line, crude and uneven, like someone had done it in the dark without a soul to help. Oh, Finley. What has she done? I scooped him up, blanket and all, cradling him against my oilskin coat. He was so light, so fragile, weighing less than a gutted cod. Shh, little one. I murmured, my voice cracking like old rigging. Nana's got you now. The word slipped out unbidden. Nana, like I'd called myself to Finley when he was small. I ran then, back up the path to the house, the baby's head lolling against my shoulder, his cries picking up into weak, mewling wails that tore at my heart. The lighthouse beam swept over us as I burst through the door. A golden spotlight on our desperate flight. Inside, the kitchen was warm from the wood stove, but it felt a world away. I laid him on the table, sweeping aside the charts and mugs with one arm, and grabbed the phone with the other. My fingers slipped on the rotary dial. Damn salt. And I punched 911 twice before getting it right. Emergency. A voice crackled through the line, calm as a mill pond. There's a baby, I gasped, pressing a clean tea towel to his tiny body, trying to rub warmth back into him. In the harbor, I pulled him from the water. He's freezing blue, barely breathing. Send help, please God, send help. Mom, stay with me. Address. Eldridge Cove. Black Point Lighthouse. Hurry, he's so small. The operator talked me through it, her voice steady as a lighthouse horn. Lay him flat, she said. Check his airway. Rub his limbs gently. Don't jostle. I did it all, tears blurring my vision, singing snatches of the old shanty Tom used to croon to Finley. Oh, the wind blows free over the deep blue sea. The baby, my grandson, though I didn't know it yet, stirred a fraction, his chest rising a bit stronger. That's it, lad, I whispered. Fight like your dad did. The ambulance sirens wailed in like banshees through the fog, lights flashing red against the windows. 2 paramedics piled out, a burly woman named Sylvie with a Quebecois lilt and a young lad, Jamie, who looked green around the gills. Sylvie took one look at the baby and swore in French, then went to work, oxygen mask tiny as a thimble, warming blankets, tiny needles for fluids. Hypothermia severe, she muttered, her hands flying. How long in the water? Minutes, not long, but the bag, it was sealed. Jamie glanced at me, eyes wide. Bag. Mom, what happened? I told them, words tumbling out. Vivienne, the wharf, the throw. They exchanged a look, pity, suspicion, the works. We'll need the RCMP, Sylvie said, bundling the boy onto the gurney. You coming? I nodded, grabbing my coat. No way was I letting this little soul face the night alone. The ride to the hospital in Digby was a blur of bumps and beeps. The baby a fragile bundle amid the gear. Sylvie kept checking his vitals, her face a mask, but I saw her jaw tighten when the heart monitor dipped. Come on, pet it, she murmured. Breathe for your gran. We hit the ER doors at a run, white coats swarming like gulls on chum. They whisked him away to the NICU, a sterile world of beeps and tubes, leaving me in the waiting room with its plastic chairs and the faint tang of bleach. A nurse, kind-eyed Margaret from the village, brought me dry clothes and a cup of tea that tasted like harbour mud. You did good, Hattie, she said, squeezing my hand. Saved his life, you did. But as the hours ticked by, doubt crept in like the tide. What if I'd imagined it? Vivienne, throwing a baby into the sea. It sounded mad, the ravings of a lonely widow staring too long at the waves. When the RCMP showed up, Constable Rise, a lanky Welsh transplant with a mustache like a broom. His questions felt like hooks in my gut. Describe the boat again, Mrs. Crowe. Make and model. Boston Weller, white with blue trim, Vivienne's. Finley's old one. And you're certain it was her? As certain as the salt on my skin. She didn't see me, but I saw her face. Pale as death. He scribbled in his notebook, eyes flicking to the door like he expected her to waltz in. We'll check the ramp logs, CCTV if there's any. But, a baby, you say? No reports of missing infants. And Ms. Crowe, Vivienne, she's been gone months. No contact? None. Raz sighed, rubbing his neck. Right, we'll look into it. But hypothermia can play tricks, ma'am. Grief, too. I bristled, but bit my tongue. Grief. I'd buried a husband and a son. I knew its shapes. This was no ghost. By dawn, the doctor, a wary Scot named Dr. MacLeod, emerged with news. Stable for now. Lungs clear of water, temp rising. Born 3, maybe 4 days ago. Home birth by the look of the cord. Will run tests, drugs, infections. Can I see him? He nodded. Briefly. Wash up. The NICU was a hushed cathedral of glass and wires. There he lay in an incubator like a captain's berth, tubes snaking from his arms, a knit cap too big for his head. So small, with Finley's dark curls peeking out, Finley's button nose. My throat closed. Hello, wee one. I whispered through the glove port, touching his hand. His fingers curled around mine, weak but fierce. In that moment, I knew. Blood or no, he was mine to protect. The days blurred into a fog thicker than any off Black Point. I stayed at the hospital, catnapping in vinyl chairs, fielding calls from villagers who'd heard whispers. Hattie's gone daft, pulling bairns from the sea. Rise came back with more questions, and a social worker named Lena, brisk, bilingual, with a French-Canadian clip, joined the fray. Temporary guardianship, she explained over lukewarm coffee. Until we ID the mother. But Mrs. Crowe, you're 66. Alone, no other family, just me and the light. She nodded, jotting notes. We'll assess. but protocol, home study, psych evil. The child's safety first. Safety. As if I'd let harm near him again. I named him that night, whispering to his sleeping forms, Fenley James Crowe. After your duh, and the saint who guides lost ships. Little Finn, they called him in the charts till the papers cleared. Word spread like spilled oil. Diane, the archivist at the Maritime Museum in town. A sharp, witted woman with a Liverpool accent and a penchant for cryptic crosswords. Dropped by with scones and sympathy. We'd bonded over Finley's memorial. She was the one who'd catalogued his sailing logs for the archives. Hattie love, this is bollocks, she said, eyeing Lena's folder. Vivienne, that one's slipperier than an eel. Remember those journals Finley left? Nautical code, half in French from her side. I could dig him out. I latched onto that. Anything to prove I wasn't losing my marbles. Back home on a mercy run, laundry a hot meal, I rummaged Finley's sea chest in the attic. There they were, leather-bound logs, pages yellowed with tide charts and scribbled notes. Vivienne's handwriting slanted across margins, Marseille, 2018, Yacht Club contact, and buried deeper, entries from Finley's last voyage, V distant lately. Found pills in her kit. Morning sickness, confronted her, says it's nothing but the will, changed it last month. All to future heirs, she raged, said I'd regret it. My hands went cold. Pregnancy, Finley knew. And the accident, his sloop foundering on the banks, hull breached like it'd been rammed. Official report, rogue wave. But now, sabotage. I hauled the logs to Diane that afternoon, her museum office a cozy den of maps and brass sextants. She pored over them with a magnifying glass, her bilingual brain decoding Vivienne's scrawls. French laced with nautical slang, evoking her European roots. Look here, she said, tapping a page. Freighter contact, John's, brake line equiv for props. And this insurance payout $250K seed, escape to Azores, blimey Hattie, she planned it. Bribed a deckhand to follow the rudder lines mid-voyage. Made it look like a collision. Rage boiled up. Hot as tar. Vivienne hadn't just abandoned a baby. She'd murdered my son for a payout, then birthed his child in secret on some rented yacht, only to dump him when the inheritance tangled. The baby, Finn, was the hair, blocking her clean getaway. We tell Ruz. I said, voice steel. But proof was thin as fog. Ruz listened, mustache twitching, but shook his head. Circumstantial, Mrs. Crowe. No body for Finley, presumed lost at sea. And Vivienne, vanished. Offshore accounts traced to Cyprus, but she's a ghost. Lena piled on. Psych evil showed grief-induced delusion. Home study flagged my isolation. They placed Finn in temp foster care pending investigation. A sterile group home in Digby. I visited twice a week, supervised, my heart splintering each time I left him crying in that stranger's arms. Weeks dragged like an anchor chain. I fought the system with everything. Letters to the MP. Petitions signed by half the village, harbour master included, once he saw the logs. Even a tearful plea on the local radio. Diane became my anchor, decoding more Vivienne's burner phone pings near Halifax marinas, a forged passport in Lisbon. She's running to Europe, Diane said. But she's cocky, left breadcrumbs. Then, 6 weeks in, the call came. Unknown number, midnight. I answered, heart pounding, breathing, then her voice. Vivienne's, smooth as oiled teak, but edged with desperation. Hattie. Still playing lighthouse keeper. Where are you? I hissed, glancing at the window where the beam swept steady. Doesn't matter. What does? I want my son back. And the insurance, $250,000 wired to my Cayman's account. Finley's air fund too. $500,000 total. You're mad. You killed him. For money. A laugh. Cold as winter spray. Finley was a fool, clinging to his little fishing dreams. I married him for the payout, the escape. But the baby. Ruined it. He changed the will. Everything to our child. So I fixed the boat, collected the insurance. Gave birth alone off PI, no records. Was going to leave the brat at a church. But the lake, no the sea, felt right. Poetic, dumping him where Finley drowned. I hit record on my phone, hidden in my pocket. Why call now? Because you're in my way, old woman. Court's sniffing around. I know about the logs. Diane's been chatty. Meet me at the lighthouse tomorrow midnight. Bring the boy and proof of transfer. Come alone, or I vanish for good, and Hattie, I'll come back for him. Mothers have rights, you know. The line died. I called Rise immediate, wired Mike, Mounties in plainclothes, snipers on the cliffs. Trap her, I said. The day crawled. I prepped Finn's bag at Diane's. Diapers, his blue blanket, leaving him safe there. Auntie Diane's got you, lad. I whispered, kissing his forehead. He gurgled, grabbing my finger, oblivious to the storm brewing. Dusk fell heavy, wind howling like banshees. Roz's team melted into the shadows too in the keeper's shed, marksman on the point, Diane monitoring radio from her van. I drove the coastal road alone, the mic taped under my collar, panic button in my pocket. The lighthouse loomed, its beam a accusatory finger. I climbed the spiral stairs, lantern in hand, heart thundering louder than the surf below. Midnight struck. The door creaked, Vivienne, hooded in black, pistol glinting in the half-light. Thinner, haunted, but her eyes burned with that old calculation. Where's the boy? In the house. We talk first. Why, Viv? He was your husband. She sneered, waving the gun. Husband? A meal ticket. I grew up scraping by in Brighton. Dad's debts, Mum's gin. Met Finley at a regatta, saw the insurance, the nest egg. Planned the long con, marry, wait, divorce rich. But pregnancy, trap, he found out, went all noble, will to the air, so I hired that deckhand in St. John's, $5,000 to snag the lines on the banks. Looked like a wreck. Collected big, hid it offshore. Baby born on a chartered yawl, no midwife, no fuss. Was going to space him, but the sea called. Your wharf, Hattie's watch, ironic, Every word gold, recorded clear. You monster, he's Finley's son. Your blood, he's a complication. Now, the money? Or I finish what I started. She raised the gun, finger whitening on the trigger. I pressed the button, 3 taps. Never touch him. The world exploded. Doors burst. Lights flooded, Ruz bellowing, RCMP! Weapon down! Vivienne spun, firing wild. The shot grazed my arm, fire blooming hot. I fell, tasting blood and salt as they tackled her, cuffs snapping like trap jaws. Got her. Rez panted, kneeling, confessions airtight. You're safe. I woke in Digby General, arm bandaged, Diane at my bedside with Finn in her arms. Look what the tide brought. She grinned, passing him over. He rooted against me, warm and alive. Nana. I breathed, tears salting his cheek. Vivienne's trial was swift. Murder one for Finley, attempted for Finn and me. The logs, recordings, offshore traces ironclad. Life, no parole, shipped to a supermax in Ontario. She'll rot with the rats. Rez said. The courts moved kinder after. Lena's reports glowed, resilient guardian, thriving child. Judge Harlan, a weathered Cape Bretoner, granted full custody at the hearing, his gavel like a anchor dropping home. Mrs. Crowe, you've navigated worse storms than most. The boy's yours. Permanently. That night, I brought Finn home to Black Point. The lighthouse beam welcomed us, steady as Tom's old watch. I rocked him by the window, waves singing lullabies, and whispered, You're safe now, Finley James. No more shadows. Years washed by like tides. Finn grew sturdy, with Finley's grin and a laugh that chased gulls. At one, he toddled the wharf, chubby hands grabbing ropes. Boat. He'd yell, pointing at the trawler I renamed Sea Legacy. Diane became Auntie D, teaching him knots and sea shanties in her Liverpool burr. Ruz, Uncle Ruz now, brought model ships, regaling him with grand tales. Sanitized for little ears. Challenges came sure. Sleepless nights when colic hit like a nor'easter. My age creaking like old timbers when he'd dash after crabs at dawn. Therapy for his early trauma. Diver's lungs, they called it, but he outran the shadows. School in the village, where kids whispered at first the sea baby. But Finn, he owned it. Nana fished me out, he'd boast, turning stares to awe. On his 5th birthday, we held a clam bake on the beach, lobster boils, fiddle music from the pub, villagers toasting with rum. Finn, gap-toothed and sun-browned, mended his first net under my eye. Tiny fingers deft as a deckhand's. Like Di, he asked, dark eyes. Finley's eyes solemn. Exactly like Da, I said, ruffling his hair. He'd be proud, lad, so proud. As the sun dipped, painting the harbor gold, I thought of Vivienne, rotting in her cell, her dreams dashed on these very rocks. Did she regret? Dream of the sun she tried to drown? I didn't hate her anymore. Just pitied the empty sea she'd chosen over love. That night, after Finn slept, I climbed the lighthouse stairs one last time before retiring the keeper's post to automation. The beam swept out, guardian eternal. We did it, Tom. I murmured to the stars, you and me and the boy. Tides turn, but family holds. Some say it was fate that I looked out that dusk, hook in hand. Others, Finley's spirit guiding my eye through the fog. Me, I think it was love. The fierce, salty kind that drags you into the drink and hauls you out breathing. Tragedy crashed over me like those waves, stealing my sun, threatening my blood. But I chose to fight against doubt, the law, the liar herself. And from the wreck, I salvaged a miracle. Finn's 6 tomorrow. He'll wake yelling, Nana, and we'll mend nets, chase dawn. I won't see all his voyages, high school dances, first love, maybe his own bairns. But I've given him roots in this rocky soil, wings of canvas and cord. And that's enough. More than enough, the sea takes, but oh, how it gives. And in Eldridge Cove, under the watchful light, we've learned to sail on.